Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to another wonderful and amazing episode of Step Out, Step In podcast, episode 133, live on YouTube and Facebook. This is the podcast that helps you to step out of what limits you to step into what God has prepared for you and for your life. And if you're joining me this afternoon or this evening, I beg your pardon, or this morning, wherever you might be watching from or watching the replay from, I just want you to do me one big favor. Just share the link with at least one person, and if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube page, please do so. Don't forget to click on the notification bell so that anytime something is posted, you will be notified. We are all in this together. And again, thank you for tuning in live on YouTube and Facebook. And again, I am your host, David Joe. And today, we'll be drawing a powerful life lesson from the airplane cockpit. The airplane cockpit. And just stay tuned.
Every Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Every Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, join me as we dive headfirst into thrilling stories of personal growth, daring adventures, and transformative experiences. Get ready to be motivated, inspired, and empowered to live your life to the fullest. So mark your calendar, set your alarm, and get ready to step out, step in with me every Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't miss out on the adventure of a lifetime. Subscribe now and let's step into the unknown together. This is Step Out, Step In. The journey begins here. Step Out, Step In podcast, live on Mondays at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Subscribe today.
And again, welcome to episode 133 live on YouTube and Facebook. And tonight we're going to be talking about landing safely into 2026. What pilots can teach us about finishing strong. Landing safely into 2026. And I said earlier on that we'll be taking life lessons from the cockpit of an airplane. And we want to look at a few things, and we want to draw some lessons from this. And, you know, this is just the the cockpit of a commercial airplane. Um, and we want to draw some lessons from it. We want to learn what pilots can teach us when it comes to landing a plane safely. We only have a few days to the end of the year. We've been flying through 2026, or I beg your pardon, 2025. And very soon we'll be landing in 2026. And we want to make sure that we are landing safely in 2026 after flying through 2025. And so, again, I want to welcome you to this episode 133 live on YouTube and Facebook. When an airplane is in the air, passengers tend to relax, they tend to have fun, they do their own thing. And but the question is, what about the pilot? Do they have the same luxury as the passengers? I don't think so. They don't get to relax or sleep or watch movies just as the passengers do. The pilot knows that London is one of the most critical parts of the entire journey. And my question to you today is simple. As you prepare to land in 2026, are you flying casually like a relaxed passenger? Or are you alert and intentional like the pilot? Your smooth landing depends on the steps you take. And I believe that the steps you take right now. Because one of the things I believe a lot of people don't really pay so much attention to is preparing for what is ahead. Sometimes we put our lives in default and we roll as we go, but we have to be intentional. There should be intentionality in our lives to prepare for what is ahead of us. And we want to take some life lessons from how pilots land safely with all these passengers on board. So we're going to be talking about, as I said, how pilots learn and how you and I can apply the same principles to enter into 2026 with clarity, with focus, and with confidence. London, ladies and gentlemen, is a serious business for uh, uh, for every pilot. London is a serious business for every pilot. And we're going to be talking about this. And I believe that landing well is also a serious business for you and me. For you and I is also going to be a serious business. Let's dive in. All right, so we want to go straight to the point, and so we're going to look at why pilot. All right, again, thank you for tuning in to episode 133, and we want to just dive in. We want to go straight, and we want to look at why pilot landings matter. Why? Now, the first question is why? You know, I said earlier on that landing a plane for every pilot is a very serious big business. And because a plane must transition from full speed to safe arrival, it doesn't land with the same speed it takes off. And and as we look at this, I know that you've been busy throughout the year. You've been working, you've been pushing, you've been grinding, you've been learning, fighting, and growing. Now you've approached December. We are in December, in fact, the middle of December. And this is our descent. And let's look at how pilots do it and how you can also do it as we come into 2026. You know, there are certain precautions that every pilot takes. And we want to look at some of these precautions and the precautions they take from the checklist. They've been doing this over and over and over. But one of the things I realize is they don't cut corners. They don't say, "Oh, I've done this multiple times. I'm going to put my checklist aside and I'm going to do it the way I know how." They always go by the checklist. They always go by the checklist. So let's look at a few of the checklist. You know, the first precaution is the checklist to go by. And before a plane begins its descent, the pilots review a detailed landing checklist. Let me see if I can. Okay. They review that detailed landing checklist. Yes, this is how this is just a sample. I mean, every airplane have their own, but this is just a sample, and this is not something that they do it once and they put it aside. Every flight, they go through the checklist. They don't guess, they don't assume, they don't, but they confirm. They review. They review the airspeed, they review the altitude, they review the fuel, they review the weather, the runway conditions, the systems, the emergencies, and the communication frequencies. This is done every single time, and there are no shortcuts, ladies and gentlemen. And what is the life application on this? As we prepare to enter into 2026, I said last week that every year I set a day aside and I go through my review. I review the entire year, what I went through, what helped me, what I haven't accomplished yet, and that is what you and I need to do before you and I land in 2026. You need your end of year checklist, ladies and gentlemen. And what are some of the what are some of the things on the checklist? Number one is, what did you accomplish? What did you learn? Everything and anything we go through, there's a teachable moment, there's a learning moment in that. What did you learn throughout the entire year? You can tell me that you've traveled 365 days to the end of the year and you've not learned anything. Uh, that can be really concerning. What should you not repeat? And most of the time, my spiritual father always tells us that make the mistakes, but don't repeat the same mistakes, because once you repeat them, it means you're not learning. So, what should you not repeat? What have you gone through? What have you experienced that didn't go well? That you should learn from it and not repeat it. What needs improvement? What must you let go of? And what do you need to prepare for next year? And I believe that most people enter the new year with hope, but no checklist. With a default, I mean, we put our lives on default and no checklist. And everything happens uh, um, to be on a default. And hope without preparation is just wishing thinking, ladies and gentlemen. God is not a God of confusion. That is one thing that you and I must always understand. He's a God of order. In fact, as a person of faith, let me throw this in. First Corinthians chapter 14 and verse 33. If you get a chance, just read that. He's a God of order. And your order determines your landing. Your order determines your landing. So, number one on the checklist is number one is the precautions to check is to go through the checklist. What is your checklist? Are you preparing any checklist for 2026? Part of the precaution is communication with control tower. Communication with control tower. Pilots never land alone. That is one thing you and I will have to understand. They constantly communicate with air traffic control. They are always in contact, in communication with air traffic control. You know, that is the tower that they don't even know who is in there, but they stay in contact. They know there's somebody in there who can guide them, who sees and and in almost all airplanes they have something they call a transponder. Once they take off, the air traffic controllers give them a transponder code and they stock it in the system, and they can locate them on the radar and they can monitor the flight throughout their journey. So they constantly communicate with air traffic control, and they before they come in, they have to clear them to land. They tell them the wind speed and the wind direction. They tell them which runway is available, and they tell them to proceed with caution. The tower sees what the pilots cannot see. And what is a life lesson from this? Communication with your own control tower as you approach the new year. As you and I approach the new year, you need communication with your own tower. And ladies and gentlemen, I would say that your control tower is God through prayer. Your control tower can be your mentors through wisdom, trusted voices through counsel, your own inner guidance through reflection. And let me put this out there. I don't know if I wrote it on Proverbs chapter 3 and verse 6. It says, "In all your ways acknowledge him, acknowledge God, and he will direct your path." In all your ways, not some of your ways, but in all your ways, acknowledge him. And he's the only one who can direct your path, because he sits up there and he sees what you cannot see. He knows what you don't know. And when you stay in constant communication with him, when you acknowledge him in all your ways, he's the only one who can direct your path and tell you which direction to go, where to stop, which runway to land on, and you can land safely with no debris or no obstructions on the runway. And you cannot land safely without checking in with your source of direction. Who is guiding you into 2026? That is my question for you tonight. Who is guiding you into 2026? The other precaution is the reduced speed. Reducing speed. I said that landing requires slowing down. The airplane cannot land at the same speed it uses to soar in the sky. It uses to take off in the sky. The pilot gradually reduces power, step by step, in a controlled descent. What is the life application with this? Slow down and reflect. Slow down and reflect. Some people end the year like they are still in takeoff mode, rushing, hurrying, piling tasks, chasing goals, and stressing themselves. No, you see them, they are always stressed. You cannot land safely when you are moving too fast. This is your time to pause. Push the pause button. This is the time for you to reflect. This is the time for you to breathe and to reset, ladies and gentlemen. Psalm 46 tells us that, "Be still and know that I am God." That is God talking. Sometimes we put our lives in a stressful moment. We try to help God. But God doesn't need your help. All he needs from you is to trust him fully and depend on him. Stillness is not inactivity, ladies and gentlemen. It is preparation. Stillness is preparation. So slow down to land strong into 2026. The fourth precaution is align with the runway. Align with the runway. When pilots come in for London, they they align with the run. They make sure now with the ILS system, the instrument lander system, you see the three green lights. I've never flown a plane before. I used to be in the Air Force. I've been around planes, so I have that interest. and and they go for the center mark. They align with the runway, and the green lights tell them that you are aligned with your runway. If it shows a red, it means you are out of alignment. So as you prepare to land this year, just as I said, pilots make sure that the aircraft is perfectly aligned with the runway, even be way before long they touch the ground. Now, if you can see that, you realize that the pilot, aligned the plane with the runway, the center mark that is right there, and a slight misalignment leads to a rough and a dangerous or a failed landing. What is a life application? You and I will have to align our lives with your purpose. Now, one of the things that I keep saying, that I believe that it's run through most of my episodes throughout this year, is that you were created on purpose. Nobody was created by mistake. Nobody is or was or has been an afterthought. God planned you. God had thought about you even before your mother, your grandfather, and your grandmother came together, and your mother and your father came together. It doesn't matter where you were conceived. It doesn't matter where you were born, but God brought you into this world for a purpose, on purpose, and for His purpose. That is one thing you need to understand. So you and I will have to align ourselves with your priorities. What are your priorities? Align your habits, align your time. What is taking your time? Are you wasting time and wasting life, or are you using your time profitably and meaningfully? What align your heart, align your relationships, and align your decisions. And ask, does where I'm headed match what God is calling me to do? And that is when you know that you are in alignment with the plans and purposes of God. If you are misaligned, you cannot land peacefully into 2026. It's going to be a rough landing. So alignment reduces unnecessary turbulence, ladies and gentlemen. It reduces unnecessary turbulence. The other precaution is scanning for hazards. I said that pilots just don't come in. They stay where they are constantly communicating with air traffic control, because where they sit in the tower, they see what the pilots cannot see. So the pilots, as they come in, they scan for changes in weather. They scan for wind shear. Wind shear is a significant change in weather speed or direction over a short distance. Sometimes just before they touch the ground, there can be a crosswind, and that is one of the most dangerous, what do you call it, weather conditions that affect airplanes. That crosswind, it can just blow the plane off the runway. They scan for birds. You know, um, you know, no pilots want to fly around birds because bird strike can be very dangerous too. A few years ago, there was this plane that took off in, I think, New York, and they had to land on the Hudson River. And it was due to bed strike. Beds got stuck into the engine, seized both engines, and they had to land. And God being so good, there were no fatalities. They landed safely. They scanned for obstacles, they scanned for runway debris, and they scan for technical problems. Anything can happen. So they scan for all these things as they come in. They anticipate and they respond. And part of the checklist, they have the emergency procedures they go through. So what are the life lessons from this? Identify your hazards for 2026. You and I need to scan our lives for hazards. We scan our lives for distractions. What are some of the things that has distracted us throughout 2025 that we don't want to repeat them in 2026? What are some of the unhealthy habits that we picked up along the way? You know, it says that it takes someone 21 days to develop a habit, but it takes forever to break it. What are some of the habits you picked up consistently for 21 days that has become something that you're dealing with now, you're struggling to let go? What are some of the toxic relationships we engaged in? What are some of the emotional triggers you and I have along ourselves? What are some of the fears? What are some of the overcommitments and lack of boundaries? Or let me say, lack of healthy boundaries. First Peter chapter 5 and the verse 8 tells us that be alert and of sober mind. So when you scan for hazards early, you prevent unnecessary turbulence later. When you scan for hazards early, ladies and gentlemen, you prevent unnecessary turbulence later. Another precaution that pilots take is they stay calm and focused. They stay very calm and focused. Even under pressure, pilots remain calm. Under pressure. There was this, I think it was Southwest Airlines that lost one engine. The engine blew apart. And in fact, the captain was a female. She was a former Air Force pilot. And they commended her for her calmness, even in that fearful moment. The airplane, the one engine just blew off. And she was so calm. And she calmly landed the plane. The calmness affects the whole plane. The calmness of the pilots affects the whole plane. So the life application is this: your calm is your strength. In your landing season, stay calm. Can you write it somewhere? And say that I'm going to stay calm. I'm going to stay calm no matter what. I'm going to stay calm. In my journey, I'm going to stay calm as I come in for London. I'm going to stay calm in 2026. Maybe 2025 has been a year of challenges, difficulties, so much friction, so much roller coaster moments, ups and downs, but you have to stay calm. Stay consistent. Consistency is something that most people struggle with, and that is the key for your success as well. Stay confident and stay committed to your course. Don't allow panic to drive your decisions. Can I say that again? Don't allow panic to drive your decisions. Your calmness is your spiritual altitude. Your calmness is your spiritual altitude. All right, so let's do this real quick. Let's quickly summarize everything we've said so far. Your landing. Let's do the summary and what it means. So to land in 2026, we're taking these life lessons from pilots, right? So we said number one, they review the checklist, they reflect, and evaluate. Number two is they communicate with the control tower. So you and I will have to communicate with our control tower, with God. We have to seek guidance from God. We have to seek guidance from wise voices. Number three is we have to slow down, pace yourself, and rest. You know, resting is not wasting time. We all need it. You are not competing with anyone, ladies and gentlemen. You are not in competition with anyone. If you think you are, then stop it. Align your runway. Align with your runway. Walk in purpose and walk with clarity. Define who you are in Christ and walk in that purpose and walk with clarity. Scan for hazards. That was scan for hazards. Be aware of anything that threatens your progress, ladies and gentlemen. Anything that is a time waster, anything that drains you. You know, we have draining people that come around you and they make sure they drain you till you have no more strength. And we have dream killers. These are people you have to avoid. These are people you don't have to engage with. Some people, you tell them your dream and they'll just shoot it down up front. I mean, just before you finish telling them, they've just shot your dream down. They try to abort your dream. Why did God tell Mary when she got pregnant to go see her cousin Elizabeth? Elizabeth had been pregnant for 6 months and nobody knew it. Think about it. That's a food for thought. And stay calm and focused. Stay calm and focused. Stay calm and focused. Trust God for a smooth landing into 2026. Ladies and gentlemen, a good landing prepares you for a powerful takeoff in the new year. And as we get into the new year, I'll talk about the takeoff as well. Now we are coming in for a smooth landing, and we will have to take off again in 2026. Cruise at 365, so 36,500 feet above sea level, 365 days for 12 months. So that's another thing we'll be talking about as we get into 2026. So watch this space.
Standard Time. Subscribe today.
Step out, step into the world unknown. Leave your fears.
All right, thank you for tuning into episode 133. Thank you, Lydia, for watching, for your time here. I really appreciate your time and spending time with us. I believe that at least we've all learned something, or we are learning something. All right, and anyone else, you know, I'm still working on this just to try to see those that are on. Let me go to the YouTube page and see who is on there. Okay. All right, and I acknowledge everyone who is on here live as well as the replay. And again, if you happen to watch the replay, let us know where you're watching from so we can acknowledge you. If you have any questions, please let us know. And thank you for being part of this journey. So let's bring the plane in for London this evening, and we'll be landing shortly. Okay. All right. So you are coming in for London. into 2026. You are approaching the runway. And 2026 is your next destination. Ladies and gentlemen, your landing matters. Your preparation matters. And your state of mind also matters. Land with intention, land with wisdom, land with faith, land with strength, and above all, land with God. Because how you learn determines how you take off. I know every week I want to give you some challenge or what you can do as we bring this to a close. As you prepare to land in 2026, take time this week and complete your personal landing checklist. Reflect on the year 2025. In spite of all that you've been through, you've gone through, there are still good moments. There are still good times. In spite of the bad times, there's still good times in there. In spite of the losses, there are still gains. And listen for God's direction. And I want to encourage you, remove any unnecessary hazards and align your heart with your purpose. Most especially the plans and purpose that God has for you. And one of the things, as I said earlier on, one of the things I do every year is I block a day before the year ends. And I review my year. And in a quiet place. No phones, no distractions. And I want to encourage you to, if you've never done it before, just try it. And let me know how it goes. Let me know. Let me know how it goes. I would be very interested to know. Then I want you to share this episode with someone who needs encouragement. We all need it. Sometimes we need other people to cheer us up, other people to encourage us. So if you can share this episode with at least one person who needs encouragement for their landing season. And remember, when you step out of what limits you, step into what God has destined for you. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to say thank you for tuning in to episode 133. And I'll see you in the next episode, God willing, same time next week. This has been your host, David Joe. Have a wonderful, amazing, fruitful, and a productive week. And all I'll say again is I love you, and there's nothing you can do. Thank you for tuning in. Stay blessed.
Step out, step into the world unknown. Leave your fears behind, watch how you've grown. Challenge yourself, break free, and begin to find the purpose within. Step out, step in, out of your comfort zone. Step into the light where your potential shone.